Hello, everyone, and welcome to this virtual workshop on creating a Lex-based question and answer chatbot with the AWS QnABot solution. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Lott, and I'm a senior solutions architect on the Language AI Services team. Today, we're going to be doing a little bit different flow than usual in that we're going to first deploy the AWS QnABot solution from the CloudFormation template, and then we will continue on with the overview and demo. Then we're going to build the QnA bot and look at the details in the management console, and then also take a look at QnA bot in a contact center. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with usage and metrics. So the reason why we're deploying the QnA bot solution first is it takes about 30 minutes to deploy. So we're going to start that off and then continue from there. Here we are on the AWS QnA bot solution site. This is where you can get all of the latest up-to-date information on the AWS QnA bot solution, including an architecture overview and implementation guide. So the first thing I want to show is how easy it is to get started deploying a QnA bot. We've provided a button here called Launch QnA Bot in the AWS console. So let's click that button. Once you're logged into the AWS Management Console, this will take you to the CloudFormation Create Stack screen. We've already pre-configured the CloudFormation Stack template S3 URL here. So you should be able to just select Next. Put in a unique stack name for your QnA bot. In this case, I'm going to say QnA bot-workshop. Please note that you cannot put spaces in a stack name, but you can put dashes. For the parameters, the first one we need to put in is an email address. This is required, and it is an email address for an administrative user. And this admin user is going to receive an email with a password, so it's important that you get this right. We're going to leave the username and public or private set as a default. And now we're going to move on to the Amazon OpenSearch service. Now, in production, we would recommend that you deploy your QnA bot with the 4-node Elasticsearch cluster. But because this is a demo, I'm going to select 2. And next for encryption. The encryption level on QnA bot also determines the type of Elasticsearch instance that is going to be deployed in your Elasticsearch cluster. And in this case, if you select unencrypted, it's going to be deployed with the T3 small Elasticsearch instances. And for the demo, it's going to save money and then also deploy a little bit faster. Finally, I want to have only EN/US as the language. For this demo, we don't need to deploy the other languages for the Lex-bot, and we're going to dive into the details about how we can auto-translate back and forth using Amazon Translate. So we'll just leave the English US language for now. And finally, select Next. We're going to scroll down here to the bottom again and select Next. And finally, let's review that we have those CloudFormation parameters correct. So the Elasticsearch node count, the email, the unencrypted encryption, and then also just the English US language. Finally, if we scroll down to the bottom, we'll acknowledge and accept that CloudFormation might create resources on our behalf and hit Create Stack. Now, as this stack gets deployed in your account, it will take about 20 to 30 minutes. And so we'll come back to this as soon as it's done. Now let's go back to the slides on QnA bot. So why are we talking about QnA bot and chatbots in general? And the reason for that is customers want to engage as the need arises. They want to simply ask questions or learn about a topic or get tasks done. Conversational interfaces meet this moment. They're natural. They're on demand 24/7, 365. They're accessible from a variety of different devices, and they're becoming more and more effective at meeting our customers' needs anytime. At AWS, we have the broadest and most complete set of machine learning capabilities. From the very bottom going up, we provide infrastructure and the frameworks to build AI/ML solutions. We have the software, such as Amazon SageMaker, to go from data prep collection all the way to deploying machine learning models in production. Above the machine learning platform, we also have our AI services, and these are what QnABot is mostly built with. So, for example, Amazon Lex, our chatbot service, and Amazon Polly, our service to go from text to speech. On top of the AI services, we have our AWS solutions, such as QnABot, that are built on all of the services and components that we see here. So, what is QnABot, and what is the QnABot solution? So, QnABot is an open source project that was started in 2017 by AWS Professional Services. It's hosted on GitHub. It allows you to build a multi-channel chatbot. And by multi-channel means that you can get to the chatbot from a variety of ways, such as phone systems through Amazon Connect and the Chime SDK, or third-party contact centers, or via the website using Lex Web UI, which is another open source project to embed Lex chatbots in your website, or through SMS messaging, such as Amazon Pinpoint and Twilio. QnABot is built with AWS AI ML services such as Amazon Lex, Amazon Polly, Elasticsearch service, and some optional services as well, such as Amazon Translate and Amazon Kendra. And the best part about QnABot as it can be deployed very quickly with a CloudFormation template like we just saw. Now, it's also built with those AI ML services, so it's also extremely extensible, and we'll take a look at how that's possible in the future. So now let's look at the architecture that gets deployed with QnABot in your account. In the gray box in the center are the services or the components that are deployed with the QnABot CloudFormation template. And I want to call out the yellow Lambda functions in the center. So these are the magic that glues together all those different services. So from the left-hand side, we have the content designer and the Lex web client, as well as Amazon Connect and Amazon Echo devices. And these are the inputs into the Q&A bot. These are the ways that users will interact with your bot from multiple channels. And then through that central Lambda uh, bot fulfillment function, that bridges the gap between the users and then the AIML services on the right-hand side. So for example, looking up questions and answers in Amazon Elasticsearch, or using Amazon Translate to convert from one language to another, or using Amazon Comprehend to pull out sentiment analysis on how the users are interacting with the bot, for example. Now, again, we can also deploy some optional services to QnABot. For example, Amazon Kendra. Amazon Kendra is our intelligent document search service where you can index documents and other data sources and then simply ask a question in natural language and get an answer. So using QnABot to bridge the gap between your customers and the information and or tasks that they need to complete. So let's take a look at an example. So on the left-hand side here, we can see a user using the chatbot, for example, through Slack or Facebook or Twilio. And in the middle in the white is QnABot. And through those channels, or even down below, like for example, Amazon Connect or Chime or Genesis or other contact centers, they can use QnABot to pull the information on the right-hand side through various data sources. Some of the features of AWS QnA Bot as it supports natural language conversations. So these are multi-turn dialogue conversations where the users can simply ask questions in natural language. For example, I need to renew my driver's license, and then they'll be routed to a set of questions that help them accomplish that task. Or they can even ask questions like, when are you open? And get an immediate answer. QnABot also deploys with productivity tools. It has a one-click deployment mechanism like we saw. It has a question and answer management dashboard, which we'll take a look at today, and also a metrics dashboard so you can see information about how your bot is being used and where it is being used. Again, AWS QnA bot integrates with a number of different services. For example, Amazon Poly, Amazon Kendra, and AWS Lambda functions that allow you to complete just about any task that you can code. And then finally, we have some quote unquote out of the box integrations with contact centers through the Amazon Connect integration and Genesis Cloud Contact Center integration. What are some of the benefits of deploying a QnA bot in your environment? Well, the first one is improved customer engagement. You can create natural sounding conversations that allow users to ask questions and then complete simple tasks and get answers. These human like interactions allow customers and employees to get the info they need, and it boosts customer loyalty by removing long hold times waiting for an agent, or and also prevents agents from being tied up for resources when you can accomplish that with QnA bot. That also translates to lower costs. Providing 24/7, 365 coverage for your customers can be expensive with human agents. And QnA bot allows you to create those voice and text bots to reduce load on your call centers and reduce wait times. QnA bot also allows you to expand to more and new channels through the integrations. So, for example, through Amazon Connect or through Slack, it allows you to reach more customers more quickly. And then finally, you can use the metrics and analytics that are uncovered by QnA bot to identify new business trends and build awareness of your business. Here's some of the major use cases of QnA bot. The big one that we always see is contact centers. So contact centers allow you to provide self-help to your customers and support your call center agents. We also see these deployed as informational bots. So can I answer your question through everyday requests? And then finally, we also see Q&A bots deployed in an enterprise setting. So how can I help you get more done? And where these are really great as we see, for example, is through human resource pages or learning sites where your employees can get the information that they need quicker in order to make them more productive. For contact center implementations, we see Q&A bot used in a number of ways. The first one is virtual agents. So we can deflect calls with human-like virtual agents and interactive voice responses. This allows you to reduce agent call volume by handling upwards of 40 or more percent of the calls with QnA bot. We also see QnA bot deployed for intelligent routing. So we can ask the user questions and identify their intent ahead of routing them to an agent. This improves the customer experience because when the agent finally, or when the customer gets to the agent already has all the information that they need. And that leads us to the third use case, which is in information capture. So we can collect the information that the agents need upfront, reducing call resolution times. Now let's see some customer success stories in using chatbots. We have many different customers using Lex and QnA bot in production. One of those that I want to call out is Oklahoma State University. And a quote from the vice president says, during peak, we can receive over 2,000 calls, which is too many for one agent to handle. However, since launching the QnA bot, it's supported over 34,000 conversations and has saved 833 hours in staff time, while ensuring every customer has received the same level of service and accuracy. So now let's see QnABot working in person. Here we have QnABot deployed in a fictitious website that I've put together to simulate a motor vehicle division website. As you can see, QnABot is themed in a similar style to the particular customer. We're starting QnABot with a list of different choices that the customer can choose. This allows customers to not have to worry about typing in a phrase, and they can simply click on what they need to get accomplished. As you can see, we clicked on Renew License, and here's an answer. To renew your license online, you need to sign into your account and how to accomplish that. We can also simply ask QnABot a question because QnABot has natural language understanding. So for example, I need to renew my license, and we get the same answer. Now, earlier I talked about how QnABot can include other AI ML services in the solution. So for example, Amazon Translate. So let's ask the same question, renew license, except in Spanish. So QnABot has returned the same answer that it previously returned in English in Spanish. And so what happened? And behind the scenes, whenever you send a message to QnABot, QnABot will use another one of our services called Amazon Comprehend to detect the prominent language. And in this case, it detected that I was speaking in Spanish. So QnABot converted that Spanish phrase into English, looked it up in our English Elasticsearch database of questions and answers, got the English response, and then converted it back into Spanish. Now let's see that again, except this time in Japanese. Now, as you can see, there are some characters and phrases in here that were not converted into Japanese, and that's because I've configured this response with what we call custom vocabulary. And QnABot supports the ability to put very specific terms, for example, product names and trademarks, into specific translations. And this is important if you don't want to rely on the auto translation mechanism where the translate might not make sense. So now let's go back to English. QnABot is also channel aware, so it knows what channel we're coming from, whether it's on the web or through a contact center or through SMS. And on the web, it has the ability to display Markdown, which allows us to format our questions and answers with bold and underline, and then also include multimedia functionality. So for example, I ask what is a QnA bot, you can see that I'm returning a YouTube video on how to create Q&A bots with Lex and Kendra. Speaking of Kendra, we also talked previously about how we can integrate with other services such as Amazon Kendra, our intelligent document service. Now, I configured Amazon Kendra with this particular Q&A bot to index a state's motor vehicle division handbook. And in my list of questions and answers in QnABot, I do not have anything about graduated licenses. However, I know that there is something about graduated licenses in that driver handbook PDF. So now let's simply ask our QnABot, what is a graduated license? So here we get the result, and it says, while I did not find an exact answer, meaning in our Q&A bot questions and answers, it did find an answer from Amazon Kendra, which says a graduated driver's license is issued to an applicant who is at least 16 but less than 18 years of age and is valid to operate any vehicle that does not require a motorcycle or commercial license. And so with Q&A bot with Amazon Kendra, you can provide answers to things that maybe you didn't think of where people were asking a question, but you do have the answer in a data source somewhere. So QnABot can also accomplish tasks, and it can also ask the user question. So, for example, what if I needed to reset my password? And in this case, QnABot responded not with a statement of an answer, but it actually is asking me a question. What is my phone number? Yes. Now it's asking a verifying question. And so in this case, I just configured it to ask for a birth date. And then finally, what do I want my new PIN code to be? Of course, we want it to be 1234. Well, here's our response from QnABot. As you can see, it says, hello from your custom Lambda function, and then the results of the questions that QnABot has asked me. And what I'm showing here is that we can use AWS Lambda functions in order to accomplish any task. And for those unfamiliar with AWS Lambda, AWS Lambda functions allow you to write code without managing the underlying operating system. So, for example, we can get our information from the user with QnABot, and then we can execute some code to accomplish whatever task needs to be handled. So, for example, changing a user's password. And finally, for my last demo, I told you how QnABot can bridge gaps between multiple channels. So in this case, I'm going to have QnABot initiate an outbound call from Amazon Connect. So let's say, for example, we were using the QnABot and asking it questions, and now I want to speak to an agent over the phone. I can simply ask QnABot to call me, and it's going to say, hey, what's your name? And then what's my phone number? And before I hit yes, I'm going to try my best to answer my phone and then put it on speaker for everyone to hear. And so now I'm receiving a call from my bot.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for calling Department of Motor Vehicles. You wanted us to call you to speak with one of our agents. Please hold while I locate an agent. We'll just be a moment. Thank you for calling. Your call is very.
And so as you heard, not only did QnABot call me, but it already knew who I was and it knew what I needed in order to be transferred to the appropriate queue. And so that's it for my QnABot demo. Let's take a look at how our CloudFormation template is deploying. Now, as I said, it takes about 20 to 30 minutes. So if it's not deployed yet, don't worry, and we'll get back to it as soon as it's done. All right, it looks like our stack has now completed. So why don't we take a look at our main stack here and look at the outputs of the stack. As you can see, we have two, or actually three URLs here that we're gonna be looking at, but the main one I wanna call out here is the content designer URL. So QnABot deploys a user interface that allows us to add questions and answers via what we call the QnABot designer. These ultimately get stored in Elasticsearch so that your QnABot can answer questions with answers. We also have a dashboard URL that has CloudWatch metrics that allow us to take a look at some of the usage of QnABot. And additionally, we have the Kibana dashboard, which we'll also take a look at in a little bit. So when your stack completes, you should have received an email from QnABot with a temporary password to log in, as well as the QnABot Content Designer URL. So I'm going to copy the temporary password and I'm going to click on the URL, which is also available here in the stack outputs. And then we're going to log in with the default username, which in this case I selected as admin. But if you changed it in the CloudFormation parameters, use that. I'm going to type in the username, and then for the password, I'm pasting in that temporary password from the email. So because this is a temporary password, we now have to put in a permanent password for you to create. Then hit send, and you should be logged in. Now, the identity mechanism for the QnA Bot Designer is based on Amazon Cognito, which is a identity provider for you to use. Amazon Cognito also supports configuration of single sign-on with SAML and OpenID that allows you to connect the QnA Bot Management Console with your identity provider. Okay, so here is the main QnA Bot Designer, and what we're going to click on is this add button in the upper right. So for every question and answer document or item, each one has a unique identifier. And these unique identifiers allow us to group like questions together. So I'm going to start with a list of different questions and answers about QnABot. However, later we're going to add some questions and answers about a different topic. So pay attention to how we organize these IDs, because later on down the line, it'll be important for you to organize your content. Question and answer pair, we have one or more questions that a user might ask. This is a hint for QnABot to use for when users ask a question. And in this case, I'm going to put in what is QnABot. And when a user types a question to the QnABot, QnABot will try its best to match the answer based on a series of these questions for each question and answer pair. And then finally, we'll have to type an answer when a user asks, what is QnABot? And so in this case, I'm going to paste in the QnABot uses Amazon Lex and Alexa to provide a natural language interface for your FAQ or frequently asked question knowledge base. So your users can just ask a question and then get a quick, relevant answer. And now I'm going to hit create. So as part of the QnABot Designer, we have a QnABot client, which is designed to be able to test your QnABot immediately. And to get to the QnABot client, we're going to hit this three-line menu button in the upper left, which I call the hamburger menu. And I'm going to scroll down toward the bottom where it says QnABot Client. I'm going to click on this. This is going to open a new window. And notice it's also going to sign us in with Cognito as admin. And this will allow us to immediately begin testing our QnABot. So we can ask, what is a QnABot? Now, the first time we ask a question, QnABot's going to initialize the Lambda functions and other things under the hood. So it'll take a moment, but once it gets going, it's very fast. And here is our answer. So we asked, what is a QnABot? And we get the answer. The QnABot uses Amazon Lex and Alexa to provide natural language interface. All right, so now let's add a few more questions. And I'm going to cheat here for the sake of time, but what I want to show you is that we have provided many different examples of different questions and answers for QnABot. And so we can use what we call the import tool, which is found in the menu under import, to import our examples and extensions. You can also use the import and export tools to import your own lists of question and answer documents. Now, we support a specially formatted JSON file or a specially formatted Excel file. And for a list of the file formats and some details, we provide a link as seen here, where you can simply fill out an Excel and then upload it or import it from a URL. But what I want you to do is go to this examples/extensions. As you can see, as soon as I hit this dropdown, it's going to expand and show us many different types of examples. And the one that I want to bring up is the sample questions and answers. So the one is here, blog samples, the starting point for the Q&A tutorial. So I'm going to click on that. And if we scroll up, we'll see that this import job has begun. And what's happening here is this JSON file is copied to an S3 bucket, which then has a trigger to import the JSON documents. And this is a great way to automate your import and export functionality of questions and answers from your bot. Okay, now that we have those imported, now let's go back to our list of questions. And there are two ways to get back to our main QnABot content designer screen. The first one is to click this QnABot Workshop admin. This is the stack name as well as the user you're logged in as. And this going forward is a cookie trail. So we can simply click this, or we can go to the menu and go to edit. And this will get us back to this main question and answer list. So you can see here now we have a number of questions and answers. So why don't we go back to our QnABot client and try some of these out. So I'm going to go back to the menu and go to the QnABot client. And going forward, I'm going to leave the QnABot client and QnABot designer tabs open, and I'll be going back and forth between them. So the first question I want to ask is, how do I use a QnABot? We use QnABot by creating and administering our questions and answers using the QnABot Content Designer. Now, for end users, what we prefer or suggest is you use another open source solution called Lex Web UI or Lex Web User Interface, which also supports voice and chat to embed the QnABot in your website. The QnABot client that we're seeing here is also built on Lex Web UI. Okay, so now let's go back to the QnABot designer. Now our next topic is about rich text answers. And so QnABot allows us to create more rich answers other than simply text. And so to do that, we're going to modify our existing what is a QnABot. And we're going to scroll down to this advanced section. So we already filled out the plain text answer here. However, if we click advanced, we can see that we can provide alternate answers based on the channel or the source that the user is interfacing with QnABot. And the one that I'm going to take a look at next is this markdown answer. I'm going to paste some markdown in here. So markdown allows us to add bold and titles and hyperlinks, as well as some more multimedia, which we'll look at in a moment. So now that we have markdown, let's hit update and close and go back to our QnABot client. And we will ask the question again, what is a QnABot? So now you can see that we have a header in bold, the AWS QnABot, and some hyperlinks to go to other pages. We also have some words in italic. Now, QnABot also supports inline HTML in the Markdown. So let's take a look at that now. So I'm going to add a new question here, and I'm going to call this firetv.001. And like I mentioned, And you can see on this left-hand side, I'm starting to arrange the questions and answers based on topics. So in this case, now we're going to add a question and answer about the Amazon Fire TV. So the question that I want to respond to is if a user asks, what is Amazon Fire TV? And I first want to paste in the standard text-based answer, which is the Fire TV brings all the live TV and streaming content you love and Alexa onto the big screen. So use Alexa on the Fire TV to bring AWS QnABot into your living room. So that's right. QnABot also supports the ability to integrate with Alexa. So this same bot that we're building now and all the work that we're putting into collecting our questions and answers and frequently asked questions and stuff can also be used on Alexa with just a few clicks. So back to the Markdown. So like I mentioned, Markdown also supports inline HTML, and that means we can provide more rich functionality and multimedia, such as iframes. So as you can see here, I'm putting an iframe into the Markdown, and now I'm going to hit save or create. Now let's go back to our QnABot client and ask, what is Amazon Fire TV? And here we have a YouTube video of the Super Bowl on our answer. So QnA bot does more than just simply ask or answer questions, in that it also has the ability to understand more context around the conversation. So, for example, if we have multiple questions that are from different subjects, QnA bot has the ability to understand what context we are talking about. So let's take a look at how that would work. So from the content designer, I'm going to add a few more questions. The first one is Alexa.cost. And the question that I want to answer is, how much does it cost? And for the answer, I'm going to say, for the latest prices on the Echo Show, see the Amazon retail site or shopping app. Now, under the advanced section, we can tell QnA bot that the topic that we're currently talking about is the Echo Show. So this is the magic for how QnABot understands the current topic. So if we ask a question such as, what is an Echo Show? And then we ask, how much does it cost? QnABot understands what it is. So I'm going to create this answer. And we're going to add another question for QnABot dot cost. How much does it cost? And the answer is QnABot is priceless. And so under advanced, I'm going to scroll down and put the topic as QnABot create. And for the QnA bot, I'm also going to set the topic for QnA bot. Now we have one more question that we have to add, which is What is an Alexa? So we're going to add a new question. We're going to go alexa.001. Or what is an Echo Show? And the answer is an Echo Show is a device made by Amazon. And under Advanced, for the topic, we're going to write Echo Show. Hit create. So now let's see this in action. If we go to the QnABot client and ask, what is an Echo Show? We can say, an Echo Show is a device made by Amazon. And if we ask, how much does it cost? We can see for the latest prices on the Echo Show, see the Amazon retail site or shopping app. Now, if we ask, what is a QnA bot? We can see what the QnA bot is, and then we can say, how much does it cost? And as you can see here, the how much does it cost is actually going to answer or match more than one question. But because QnABot now has an understanding of what topic we're discussing, QnABot will reply with QnABot is priceless. I see I have a typo here. Okay, so now let's take a look at automatic language translation. And so as you can imagine, as your question and answer set of documents grow, especially when it comes to multi-language, it can be a heavy lift to manually translate all of these questions and answers into a number of languages. And with QnABot, we make it very easy to turn on multi-language capabilities. And to do that, we have a settings screen in QnABot. So in the upper left, there's a hamburger menu here that you can select and go to Settings. This exposes all of the common settings in QnABot. Now, these settings are stored in what's called the parameter store. So behind the scenes in AWS, you can go in there to programmatically or manually modify those settings, but you can also modify them here. Now, the one that I'm looking for is the enable multi-language support, which we see here. So I'm going to change that from false to true. And I'm going to scroll down all the way to the bottom in order to hit save. Now, I also want to call out that there's a reset to defaults button, so don't be afraid to experiment. And then also we have the ability to save the settings. So once you have those settings configured in the way that you like for your bot, you can back them up with the export and then also restore those settings with the import. So now let's hit save. And now I'm going to go back to our QnABot client. And I'm not even going to attempt to say this, but we're going to ask, what is a QnABot in French? And so here we are. QnABot has auto-translated that response into French and provided the answer for us. And all we did was have to turn on the translate setting in QnABot. Now, QnABot also supports Amazon Translate's custom terminologies, so you can provide manual overrides to those auto translations. So again, that's used for things like industry-specific terms or product names or trademarks that you want to have very specific translations for those languages. All right. So once you have your Q&A bot working in production, one of the things that we suggest is that you monitor your bot's usage over time. Now, you'll find that customers are asking questions of your bot that you didn't even think of to put a question and answer in, or you might want to take a look at what questions are more frequently asked. And then you also might want to get some information about what um, are the most commonly asked questions and other channels that the bot is being used in. And so to do that, we have the QnABot Kibana dashboard that gets pre-deployed with Amazon Elasticsearch and QnABot Solution. And that's available in the hamburger menu again. And if we scroll down to the Kibana dashboard, we can select it and then log in. So the dashboard itself that we've pre-configured for you is under the dashboard section. And the easiest way to get to it is to use the Kibana menu and go to dashboards and then select the QnABot dashboard. So because we just deployed this bot, we don't have too much stats, but let's take a look at some of them here. On the upper left, we have the number of requests, and then we also have the sentiment analysis. So these can either be positive, negative, or neutral. So for example, if users are using expletives with your bot, you might have a neutral sentiment detected. This upper middle section is the answer source. So this is where did QnABot find the answer? So showed some examples earlier of where the question and answers weren't just coming from Elasticsearch, but they were also coming from Amazon Kendra. And so you can see the percentage of the different answer sources which would appear here. In the upper right-hand side is the client types. So in this case, we've only been interfacing with our Q&A bot through the Lex web client, which is lex.txt. However, if we have added our Q&A bot to other channels, such as our voice channels like Amazon Connect or Genesis Contact Center, the client type would appear here and show you a pie chart of the percentages of the different ways users are interacting with the bot. So finally, down below, we have the logged utterance word cloud, the no-hit word cloud, and then a positive and negative feedback word cloud. Word clouds they kind of look like clouds because they're just a bunch of phrases, and the size of the text in word clouds are the frequency of that phrase is use. So for example, if you had a phrase that was larger than the others in the word cloud, that means that it was more commonly asked of the bot. And since we just deployed this bot, there's not much here in terms of the word cloud. However, we can see the different logged utterances that we asked of the bot. Now, the most important one, in my opinion, are these two on the right, which is the no hits and negative feedback. The no hits are questions that the user asked the bot that it had no answer to. And these are important because you'll want to go in here over time and look at what phrases people are asking your bot that the bot didn't know what the answer was. And then finally down here, these positive and negative feedbacks. In the Q&A bot client, you can see that we have these thumbs up, thumbs down feedback mechanisms of the bot. And what this allows your customers to do is give you some feedback as to whether or not this answered their question. And so if they provide a thumbs up, QnABot will log that as a positive feedback. And if they provide a thumbs down, these are the very important ones because this means that the user asks your bot a question and the bot thought it had the right answer. However, when the user read the answer, they realized it wasn't what they wanted. So you'll want to go back, at a regular cadence, maybe once a week or once a month or once a quarter, depending on your needs, and look at the Q&A bot dashboard metrics and either update the questions that got negative feedback or add new questions based on the ones that had no hits. So that's it from the QnA bot dashboard and how to fine tune your bot over time. We have one more feature as part of the Q&A bot designer that I want to review today, and that is the testing functionality. So as your list of questions and answers grow, you'll want to be able to find a way to test each question and answer um, more effectively rather than going to your bot and simply asking. And we have two functions for this. The first one is a simple test that allows you to ask a question and then also include a topic if you want, and then see which answers matched. Because remember, in some cases, there may be more than one answer. For example, how much does it cost? The user asks how much does it cost, but there is no topic set yet, like they didn't ask what is a Q&A bot or what is a Echo Show, then these are the two answers that QnA bot would provide for the user. And QnA bot uses this scoring mechanism to determine which one with the highest score gets displayed. And over time, you can use this test functionality to provide an answer and see which answers will come back, especially if the answers and the questions are somewhat ambiguous, like in this case. The second one is the test all function. And this function will ask every question to make sure that it matches the correct answer. And again, this is if you have lots of overlapping questions and answers, and you want to be able to test all of the questions and answers all in one go and get a report back to see if there were any that where the question was sent to the bot, but it got to the wrong answer. And so you can click this test all button, and the Q&A bot designer will ask your bot all of those questions and make sure that the answers, and it provides you a report of the answers to make sure that they match. Now, if a question was asked and the answer was a different answer than what was expected, it'll highlight the row for you to go in and fine tune either the question or the answers or both to make sure that all the answers, all the questions that a user asks get to the right answer. Okay. So the last bit of information that I want to share with everybody today is around Q&A bot and the contact center integration. Now, at the beginning, I mentioned that Q&A bot supports both Amazon Connect and Genesis Cloud Contact Center out of the box with integrations. And to do that, we have a wizard that walks you through step by step how to configure those channels. So from the menu, if you scroll down to Amazon Connect, you can see that we have a step-by-step guide on how to import a Lex bot, in this case, the Q&A bot, into Amazon Connect. And there are 3 steps, or 5 steps, but the first one is to provision an instance, which has 3 steps. The second part is to add Q&A bot into your Connect instance to allow your Connect instance to talk to the Q&A bot. Then we'll need to create a contact flow. Then we'll need to import a contact flow. So QnA bot has a button here that allows you to download a pre-configured contact flow that has the bot embedded in it, ready to go as an example. So I'm going to click that and I'm going to download that contact flow. And then I will import this into our Amazon Connect in a moment. And then finally, if you don't have a phone number yet, claim a phone number and then add that contact flow to that number. So let's see that right now. The other thing I'd like you to do is we have some pre-configured questions and answers as an example for Amazon Connect. So if you go to the import settings screen, which is where we were earlier when we imported the blog samples, if you scroll down to the Amazon Connect wizard Q&A, I'm going to click load here and import a list of example questions and answers. And we'll take a look at those before we go to connect. So here we are. You can see that we have a lot more questions and answers now, and we have a big batch of them for the connect helper. And the one I really want to call out is the hours. So when is your business open? And it asks the user, do you want to know the hours for Seattle or Boston? And when the user asks or replies with either Boston or Seattle, it'll match one of these two questions and then reply with the right answer. So this is a way, a demonstration of call deflection. So now when a user first calls Amazon Connect, they can ask their question like, when is your business open, and get an answer, and they never had to speak to an agent. The other important one I want to call out is, well, what if they do want to speak to an agent? How does QnABot integrate with Connect to let Connect know that it needs to accomplish a certain task on the Connect side? And so this is an example question here. So if I ask QnABot, I want to speak to an agent, or any of these other phrases such as agent, representative, operator, here's the magic, which is QnABot supports what we call handlebars or mustache, because they kind of sideways look like handlebars or mustaches. And these will allow us to set session attributes, more specifically Lex session attributes. And the second parameter here is the attribute name and then the value. So in this case, if I ask the QnABot, I want to speak to an agent, it'll reply with, okay, let me route you to a representative who can assist you. And it'll set the session attribute of next action to agent. So then on the connect side, Amazon Connect can see that QnABot set the next action to agent and then route them to an agent. And you can use these mechanisms to be able to route customers to a particular area. So, for example, we could have asked them another question, such as, um, you know, why do you need to speak to an agent, or what department do you want? And then set this session attribute not only for next action agent, but maybe what agent we want to talk to, what flow we want to go through. Okay, so now let's see how easy it is to import a contact flow into Amazon Connect. Now, I already have an Amazon Connect instance up and running in my account. However, I don't have the QnABot configured yet. So here's my Amazon Connect instance. The first thing we want to do actually is go to the management console and go to the settings for Amazon Connect. So I'm going to go type in Amazon Connect and click on Amazon Connect. I'm going to pick my instance and I'm going to go to contact flows on the left. This will allow us to configure the integration between our Lex-bot, which is QnABot, and Connect. It will allow Amazon Connect to talk to it. So I'm going to pick my region. In this case, I'm in North Virginia, and I'm going to select this Choose a Bot option. Now, as you can see, there are a lot of different bots that were deployed with QnABot, but the one that I want to click on is this main one, this QnABot Workshop. And that's our main bot. And for the bot alias, for all of QnA bots, we use the live alias, and that points to the most recent version of this QnA bot. And that's it. So now let's go back to Amazon Connect. Here we are in our Amazon Connect. And the next thing we need to do is create a new contact flow and then import our QnA bots contact flow that we imported or exported from the wizard earlier. So on the left-hand menu, I'm going to go to Routing and click on Contact Flows. Here we're going to select on the upper right, Create Contact Flow. Now I'm going to bypass the name and go right to this upper right dropdown and select Import Flow. This will allow us to choose the JSON file that we downloaded earlier. So I'm going to hit Select and select my contact flow. So as you can see, now we have our full contact flow pre-configured with our QnABot workshop bot. The last thing we need to do here is make sure that we choose a working queue. So I'm going to double click on this and select a basic queue that we have already, and then hit save. And then finally, we need to publish this contact flow so that we can use it with our phone number. So I'm going to hit publish. And then finally, let's integrate this contact flow with a phone number and then call our bot. So here we go back to menu, go to routing, select phone numbers, and click on our phone number. And then we'll update the contact flow with the QnA sample multilingual bot and select save. So now I'm going to put my phone number or put my phone up to the mic and call our new QnA bot.
Hello. Welcome to QnABot. For English, press 1 or stay on the line. For Spanish, press 2. For French, press 3. Ask me a question.
What are your hours?
We have multiple locations in Seattle and Boston. Do you want to know the hours for Seattle or Boston?
Seattle.
Our Seattle location is open Monday and Tuesday from 9 to 5 Pacific time. Ask another question or say return to main menu.
Speak to an agent.
Okay. Let me route you to a representative who can assist you. Thank you for calling. Your call is very important to us and will be answered in the order it was received.
And so now the user gets routed to an agent queue. Now let's go back to our deck. Thank you for attending the session today. I hope you learned a lot about QnABot and how it can help you be more successful with chatbots. If you would like to clean up your stack, all you have to do is go to the CloudFormation stack and select delete. That will clean up any of the resources that were deployed with QnABot. For next steps with your QnABot, we're going to share the AWS QnABot solution page that has the implementation guide. We also have a blog post at amazon.com/QnABot where you can learn many more details about the QnABot solution. We suggest that you go ahead and deploy QnABot in your environment and also go through the workshops like we did today. More details on workshops can be found at qnabot.workshop.aws. Finally, if you need help, don't be afraid to reach out to your account team. We also have the AWS Partner Network where they can help you deploy your QnABot in your accounts. And finally, we also have AWS Professional Services. Thank you again for your time today. My name is Christopher Lott, and I'm a Senior Solutions Architect on the Language AI Service team. Have a good rest of your day.